I feel like she doesn't need introduction. If you live in the county, you know who she is. If you were here, especially during COVID, you definitely know who she is. I'd like to introduce you all to Suzanne Grimacy, the PIO, Chief of Strategy and Community Engagement at the Santa Barbara County Department of Behavioral Wellness. She's been to many summits. She's participated as a member of the Santa Barbara County School Wellness Council. She's worked closely with countywide school districts, providing training and leading school-based behavioral health disaster and trauma response, including intervention response for suicides, student deaths, psychological first aid, and aiding in establishing ongoing support structures. Suzanne has been a very integral part of the School Wellness Summit for more than a decade, and of course has been a key member and partner in school communities here on the Central Coast. She's going to help us keep the spotlight on workplace wellness and supporting staff well-being, so please help me welcome Suzanne to the stage.
Good afternoon. Wow, yesterday I spoke somewhere and I was right after lunch, and now it's the last person at the end of the day. I'm so sorry. And I'm looking at the slide and that picture looks a little odd, so that's okay. Just bear with me. That's not how it looked on my end, but that's okay. So I want to touch first on the presentation just before me and the T stations. That was amazing. I loved your presentation, and it made me think of an experience just last night. I have 3 young adult children that when they were younger, we were raised a lot around tea. If you were sick or you had a sore throat, I offered tea. If you were feeling sad or it was an emotional kind of need, we offered tea. And yesterday was a very busy day. Last night was a really busy night. So it was late at night. I opened my laptop to look over the agenda and things for today. And my youngest child, 20, came out in the room and looked surprised and said, "Mom, are you okay?" I said, "No, I'm fine. I'm looking over something for tomorrow." And she paused. She said, "Are you sure you're okay?" I said, "I'm fine." So she started to walk away, and then she came back and said, "Do you need tea?" I said, "No, I'm okay." So anyway, that was wonderful. So I am going to be speaking to combining 2 different things, workplace well-being and connection, which are actually very much related. So 2 years ago at the summit, in fact, I think the night before the summit, the Surgeon General's priority report on workplace well-being, the 5 essentials of workplace well-being, was released. An amazing report. And last year, that's what I spoke to. So I'm going to do a little bit of a refresher today. But last year, the most recent report from the Surgeon General was on connection and the importance of reconnecting, and he entitled it "The Epidemic of Loneliness." And when it first came out, I was hesitant to read it. I would eventually, but I knew it was going to talk about post-COVID and needing to reconnect, and we all know how important that was. When I finally did read it, I was pleasantly surprised. The data that supported what he wrote far preceded the pandemic. It was truly about the importance of human connection and how, as a society, we're starting to lose those connections. So that's what I'm going to speak to today. And then I want to add in one more thing in the introduction. Every year on October 10th is World Mental Health Day. I always get interested to hear what the theme is, because I know what our priority issues are locally, but you get to hear globally. What's the world thinking as important? So the 2024 theme for World Mental Health Day is prioritizing mental health in the workplace. So it's just a kudos that I think we're all connected and on the right page. All right, so knowing that we would be late in the day and wanting to keep our blood flowing a little bit, but also wanting to incorporate in the importance of connecting, I thought we could play a little thumb ball, just for a couple of minutes. Who's familiar with thumb ball? Okay, very few. So the way and this is going to be very, very brief. Yes, you're going to catch it. I'm going to ask in a minute those interested to stand up. That way I know you're interested and I don't nail you with something if you're not, and I don't hit a glass. I have 3 balls. I'm going to throw them out. When you catch the ball, the question that your thumb is on is the question that you're going to read out loud and answer to the group. They're easy questions. They talk about workplace well-being. I have 3 balls so that you have a chance to kind of look at your question before you're called on. So if you're willing to play thumb ball, please stand up. over here. Ashley.
The work that's most meaningful to me. Right, that's changed over the years. But right now, the work that's most meaningful to me is work that I know will improve the community for my daughter, who's only 2.
Oh, love it. Love it. Alma.
Someone that I'm thankful for at work. I have an amazing boss who has really taught me how to just manage the work-life balance and just the positive affirmations and just to grow as a leader.
Thank you.
Our work team is leading more than ever is. And my work meetings are with a bunch of children instead of my garden teachers. And it is definitely more productive when we incorporate movement and breath at the beginning of every class. Shaking, jumping, breathing, being the wind. It always makes everything more productive.
Love it. Thank you. And I'll come back and get those so you don't have tossing that. It only takes a minute, less than a minute, to have that kind of connection to share. So that's what this game shows, and I hope to embody all of you to get some thumb balls or do something that brings this into your workplace. Okay. The Surgeon General's report on the 5 essentials of workplace well-being have a couple of key highlights before we talk a little more. These are no-brainer things, they're things that you know, but I just want to say them out loud. So the first is that our workplaces play a significant role in our lives. And I want to acknowledge that this is not only the case for faculty, for teachers, for support staff, for the adults, but for students as well. For adults, we spend the majority of our day in our workplace. For students, they spend the majority of their day at school and in their workplace. Whoops. Next, work affects our physical and mental well-being in good ways and in bad ways. And I heard work-life balance. Work-life balance is essential for adults and for students. Maintaining a balance also means our personal awareness to where our stress levels or our windows of tolerance are, so that we can incorporate in the coping skills, our self-care skills that we know bring us back into that window and keep us balanced. Especially important during high-stress events, which could range from exam season, major life events, losing a loved one, a disaster in the community. So critically important. A strong work-life balance helps with, and we know this, higher creativity and innovation, greater determination to achieve goals, increased motivation and engagement, and many more things. Whereas an imbalance can create feelings of anxiety and depression. It can have decreased productivity, poor academic performance, higher rates for burnout, poorer mental and physical health. The pandemic brought the relationship between work and well-being into clearer focus. It did an amazing thing with destigmatizing talk about mental health. Beautiful, a wonderful silver lining. So this next slide shows some of the statistics that were in the Surgeon General's report. And I too can't read that, so I'm going to come over here. So in the Surgeon General's report, it shows that 76% of United States workers reported at least one symptom of a mental health condition. And by the way, this spanned across 178 different surveys, so this is a big data set. 84% of respondents said that their workplace conditions had contributed to at least one mental health challenge. And 81% of workers reported that they will be looking for a workplace that supports their mental health in the future. So that's the landscape behind his writing of this report. If you were here last year, this might look familiar. These are the 5 essentials of workplace well-being. Each essential is grounded in 2 human needs. It spans across all industries, roles, school, education, anywhere. And he talks about creating a plan to enact these practices in a workforce which strengthen the essentials of workplace well-being. And he talks about them all being essential. So what I'm going to do now is just walk you through two of those essentials as an example, but also that tie into our next talk about connection. So the second actually essential is connection and community. So organizations that create opportunities for social connection and community can also improve health and well-being. The essential rests on the two human needs of social support and belonging. Social support is having the networks and the relationships that can offer physical and psychological help and can mitigate feelings of loneliness and isolation. Belonging, the feeling of being an accepted member of a group. The key components: creating cultures of inclusion and belonging, cultivating trusted relationships, and fostering collaboration and teamwork. The third essential of the framework is that work-life balance, work-life harmony. Professional and personal roles together can create work and non-work conflicts. The ability to integrate work and non-work demands, that balance for everyone, rests on the human needs of autonomy and flexibility. Autonomy is how much control we have over when, where, and how we do our work. Flexibility is the ability that we have to work when and where we feel is best for us. And that doesn't mean a free-for-all. The key components: provide more autonomy over how work is done. Make schedules as flexible and predictable as possible. Increase access to paid leave whenever possible. And respect boundaries between work and non-work time. Much easier said than done. When these 5 essentials are not in place, a workplace and the workers within it are at risk for compassion fatigue, also known as empathetic strain, burnout, and in fields such as education, where you're directly exposed to the firsthand trauma of students that they bring every day, secondary traumatic stress. And by the way, secondary traumatic stress is now being broadly recognized as an occupational hazard. Okay. In a moment, I'm going to ask you, I'm not going to throw a ball this time, but ask for a couple of shout outs of what your school has done that you've seen that incorporates and maybe an essential of workplace well-being, or just something you know you can see is working well, or something that you could do. But I want to give a few examples. Wellness Wednesdays. A school invites in community yoga teachers, has sponsors walk around the neighborhood during lunch, organizes social events, all things that are meant to bring people together. Another, midweek meetup. This school invites teachers to share lunch and to talk about the things that are going well and the things that are weighing heavy on their hearts. These schools are making space for conversations that matter. And you saw how quickly we could do just the thumb ball, less than a minute. Another example is a teacher who shares taking 5 minutes out of every day, 5 minutes, to write an encouraging note to a colleague, letting them know that she sees their hard work and their heart and sees how they share that with others. She knows that those 5 minutes can make an invaluable and a powerful ripple effect throughout her school. So some examples. So I'm going to ask for some shout outs. What has your school done for well-being in the workplace, or what could it do? We know wellness centers. What else?
During the pandemic, my principal would have the psychologist check in with us each grade level once a week, just to ask, is everything okay? Is there anything I can do for you? And most of the time it was, no, I'm okay, I'm hanging in there, even though people were stressed. But just knowing that somebody cared, even if it was a sign, it did help to build that relationship and just help us to
Having someone check in weekly, and it also destigmatizes. You don't have to raise your hand and say, I'm having a hard time. You know that person's going to check in weekly. That's a wonderful example. What else?
Which is under the children behavioral health initiatives to associate with mindful Mondays. So every other week, there's 15 minutes at the start of the workday where we train mindfulness ambassadors at all the different locations. And it's just a walk in and it's just breath work. And so that's something that we've got going on.
Mindful Mondays. Practicing mindfulness is a routine in the culture. I love it. What else?
We held professional development on wellness strategies for the entire staff.
Love it. Love it. What else? Okay, how about this? What are some things that you think that your school or district or whatnot could do? Not in place now, but ideas.
So we use Second Step for our SEL education, and part of that is something called Mind Yeti, and it's just 5 minutes of breath work, or just every day it's something different, and just that 5 minutes every day after lunch, it just makes a difference. It just gives the kids some strategies, and it also helps the teachers just to have a moment of just doing nothing. Because if you're doing nothing, then you can actually have the power to do everything. Doing nothing.
Doing nothing, you have the power to do everything. I love that. And working these things into the schedule, that predictability of knowing that this is going to happen each day or once a week or whatever, at what time, is incredibly good for our minds. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I love hearing. It's so inspirational to hear what people are doing, what the schools are doing. All right. So the second essential that we talked about was connection and community. The importance of connection is critical. When I do work in the community following a disaster, I'll put that at the top of the list of something that helps us to recover. Connection, being connected to others. So I want to toggle now over to that. So the Surgeon General's most recent priority report was on connection. I was looking and reviewing some things in preparation for being here today, and I found a TED Talk video that I really liked. It was spoken from a teacher named Sydney Jensen, who is a teacher at Lincoln High School, located in Lincoln, Nebraska, and the mascot of their high school is an actual link. That is a true story. Fascinating. I researched it because I wanted to make sure it was really true, but it is. So Sydney shares about a yearly tradition, an icebreaker activity she does the first day of school with her 9th graders, where she starts by telling about the link and what each of those 4 links mean. And then she gives them each a slip of paper and invites them to write something about themselves on the paper. It can be something they love, something they hope for, anything connected to their identity. And then she goes around the room with a stapler and staples them together to make a chain. And then she hangs them in her classroom, both as a decoration, but a reminder that they're all connected. I loved her video. In her TED Talk, she talks about something interesting. She says, what happens when one of those links feels weak? And what happens when that weakness is the person holding the stapler? The person who is supposed to make the connections, the teacher. She goes on to describe the everyday work that teachers do to provide socially, emotionally, academically for students who come to school each day, and it may be under the hood, but with diverse and challenging situations. She shares of students, and you all know this, that go home every day to two parents in the household, and they sit at the dinner table with a healthy meal, and they talk about the things they learned for the day. She also talks about knowing of her students that go to group homes or homeless shelters or into the cars to sleep with their families. She describes the concept of secondary traumatic stress and compassion fatigue very well. She says this. She says, our emotional piggy banks are constantly being drawn upon, and after a while, they can become depleted, so depleted that it's hard to bear. She says that we are constantly absorbing the traumas that students share each day, and after a while, our souls become weighed down by the heaviness of it all. Secondary traumatic stress is the result when an individual hears about the firsthand stress of another. It's seen in environments where people are regularly giving to others. Compassion fatigue can also be described as the cost of caring. It happens often when you're absorbing and feeling the feelings of the students coming in and you start to go home feeling it yourself. It sounds daunting, sounds horrible, but I'm sharing this for a reason. There's stuff you can do about it. It doesn't have to feel that way. There's been a lot of research that shows that compassion fatigue is comprised of two things: secondary traumatic stress and burnout. So what do we do to prevent that? And I heard this word a few times in conversations today: awareness. Being aware of what it looks like, what it feels like, being aware of what your triggers are, being aware of how you stay in your window of tolerance. Balance. Balance between home and work, balance within work, balance at home, and connection. So it sounds daunting, sounds horrible, but there are things that we can do about it. I'm going to share with you the last minute of Sydney's video.
Is more than just a decoration. Those
Thank you. Wow, you've got that mastered. Thank you. Okay, wonderful video, and I believe Kirsten has it somewhere so you can watch her whole TED Talk. It's really, really good. Okay, I want to now go a little bit deeper into social connection from the Surgeon General's report because it's such rich data. So the data for his social connection facts that he shares came across or spanned across 148 different studies over an average of 7.5 years that preceded the pandemic. One compelling piece of data that he shares is that social connection increases our odds of survival by 50%. That's pretty compelling. He also talks about loneliness and the lack of social connection being as dangerous physically to our health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But anyway, here are a few more stats. Living in isolation reduces our chances of survival, and social isolation increases the risk for premature mortality by 29%. Poor social relationships, social isolation, and loneliness can increase your risk of heart disease by 29% and stroke 32%. Lack of connection has far more negative effects than we might think. A couple other things that he talks about. He talks about connection being a continuum, that too often indicators of social connection or social disconnection are seen in a dichotomous way. Someone is lonely or they're not. But the evidence points to it being more of a gradient. Everyone falls somewhere on the continuum of social connection, and that changes from time to time, with low connection generally associated with poor outcomes and higher social connection with better outcomes. Second, social connection is dynamic. The amount and quality of social connections in our lives is not static. Social connection changes over time and can be improved or compromised for a myriad of reasons: illness, moves, job transitions, countless other life events can all affect it. Further, how long we remain on one end of the continuum may matter, the data tells us. Transient feelings of loneliness may be less problematic or even adaptive because the distressing feeling motivates us to reconnect socially. In the same fashion, temporary experiences of solitude may help us manage demands. However, chronic loneliness, even if someone is not isolated, So it's very possible for children or adults to feel very lonely, even though we're around things all the time. And isolation, even if someone's not feeling lonely, represent a significant health concern. Third, much like the absence of disease does not equal good health, the absence of social deficits or loneliness does not necessarily equate to high levels of connection. As I mentioned earlier, the data just fascinates me because what it tells us over a long period of time is all those things in our society that bring us together. Overall, if you look at all the data, our connections are decreasing. Could be resulting from a number of things, but our social networks are getting smaller. The level of social participation is declining, whether or not people are reporting feeling lonely. School administrators, leaders, boards of education, teachers, students, PTAs, online learning platforms, everyone can help play a role in this. Examples include developing a strategic plan for social connection at your school in a way that you can track and see the changes over time. Creating spaces for students and teachers to develop social skills and strengthen relationships, and it doesn't have to be defined that way, but that's what's taking place. Building social connection into health curricula. Implementing socially based educational techniques like cooperative learning projects where students can improve educational outcomes as well as their peer relationships and their connections. Creating a supportive school environment that fosters a culture for students and staff to lean on one another and to learn from one another's experiences. Just one last slide of a takeaway before I close. Humans, all of us, are wired for social connection, but we become more isolative over time. Social connection significantly improves our health and well-being for all individuals. Social connection is vital to community health and success. And you all know that, whether it be from physical education, the food that we eat, that's what today is all about. And together, we can advance social connection and improve our community and our nation's public health. As I close, I just want to reiterate, social connection is so important, but the connection that you have with those that share a same experience is invaluable. We all have those people in our life that we go to at the end of the day and we debrief a challenging day or we share something exciting with. But especially when there's a high stress event or struggles are taking place in the workplace for an adult or for a student, there is nothing more valuable than connecting with your peers. You are your own greatest assets, and the students are as well. So I thank you all for what you're doing. I hope that it continues to cultivate that within your cultures. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. We know that schools are the workplace for both staff and students. And we know that work and schoolwork affects both our physical and mental well-being in good ways and in bad. So we just want to thank you for being here today and elevating this topic. Loved the thumb ball exercise. Think that's a great opportunity for us to maybe take back to our workplaces. And then, of course, for your continued support over the years. Just an amazing local leader, and we appreciate you.